Good afternoon and welcome to the Plan4Health Communications webinar. I'm Elizabeth Hardig with the American Planning Association and with the Plan4Health project, and we're excited to have you here this afternoon. We have a full hour of communications information to share with you, but we've actually split it up into two mini webinars, so you might hear some beeps as we move through the program. The first 30 minutes will be with Roberta Ruers from the American Planning Association, talking a little bit more about how to make our messages memorable. And then at 4:30, we'll shift gears a bit and speak with Patrick from the American Public Health Association to talk more about Social Media 101. We are excited to have both Roberta and Patrick with us today and are looking forward to a great conversation about how to strengthen our communications efforts. So before I hand things over to Roberta, I wanted to just take a moment and tell you a little bit about our guest speaker today. So Roberta Ruers has more than a decade of nonprofit and corporate communication experience. She serves as a senior communications coordinator at the American Planning Association, promoting the association and the planning profession through a variety of media outlets. And I have to say, we are so fortunate to have Roberta on our Plan4Health team, and I'm looking forward to learning more. So Roberta, I will hand things over to you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. That was a beautiful introduction. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Making Memorable Messages. As Elizabeth said, I'll be talking about the importance of messages and how you can go about creating them for your own coalition, and then we'll switch gears and Patrick will take over and talk a little bit about social media after that. So quickly what I'll cover in our brief 30 minutes, and obviously this is going to be a high-level overview just because we can't get into great detail or I'd have you here for hours and hours and hours, and I might be the only one who gets that geeked out about communications. So we'll talk a little bit about the environment that you're facing and how do you get your messages heard and get attention for your coalition. A little bit about what is a message, why do we need them, the most important thing, how do you create them, and how do you actually use them. So today's communication environment is really challenging, and the use of consistent messages is really important so your message gets heard above all the other chatter that's going on. The environment's very tough. Reporters are being asked more and more to do lots and lots with less staff and less information. It's a fast environment. It's a rapid news cycle. Something happens in California, 1 minute later, it's gone global and around the world. And it's also very busy. We're not dealing with just what we used to call the traditional so-called print reporters, but anyone can be a reporter. Think about it. If you have a Facebook page, a Twitter account, a LinkedIn page, or even if you have your own personal blog, you can be considered part of the media. And I love these two quotes up here from two veteran reporters who kind of talk about the challenges that they're faced. You know, the deadline went to every hour as opposed to a couple of times a day, to, you know, anyone can be a journalist and report on stuff. So as I mentioned, today's communications environment is muddled. There's a lot going on. So how do you get your message heard on through all of that chatter? You need to use clear and concise messages about your work. So why messages? Why are messages so important? Well, basically, you're taking the hard work away from the people you want to hear, so it's easier for them to process what you're saying. We're going to translate complex information, make it easier for them to remember, easier for them to tell their friends and family about it. We want to cull down on the verbal clutter so they can really identify what you want them to know right away. Make lasting verbal pictures, easy to understand, can talk easily and comfortably about the topic. So to start with our messages, the very first step is to know your audience. And every individual tunes into the station, and I bet you didn't know that, WIIFM. And that stands for What's in It for Me. That's really important when we're thinking about our messages, because let's be honest, if we don't feel a connection to what's being said to us, what do? We shut down, we start checking our phone, we go on Facebook, we start looking around the room, we're not paying attention to the speaker or to who's talking to us even. So when we tune into WIIFM, we want to think, what do they know about your topic already? What do they care about? And what information or facts can you offer them that will capture their attention and what they'll pay attention for? So step 2, we need to think about what everyone is dealing with. And sadly, as much as it pains me to say this, you will forget at least 40% of what I say within 1 hour. So the challenge to me is to be memorable, maybe a little funny, but so you'll remember at least something that I said. And I hope it's that you remember messages are important. So think back for a minute, did you scan some news articles today? Did you see a TV interview? Did you attend a presentation somewhere? What can you remember from that? What little nugget of information? What made it memorable for you? Did it resonate with you? Was it a shocking fact or a little tidbit? Or did you have a personal connection or an experience or know somebody who knew somebody sort of thing? So think about what made that little nugget of information resonate with you, and think about that when we're talking to our coalition audiences. So to start with, we have what we call a message pyramid, and this is kind of a visual presentation to help explain the different parts we're going to go into this afternoon. So there's 3 parts that will make up any message. The first, the very top of the pyramid, is our message itself. And then it's supported by 2 proof points. You can also think of the proof points are the walls of your house, and the message is the roof. So that kind of gives you another visualization. So I've said all along, messages are important. We need messages. What is a message? Well, first off, it's a key statement about your project. Your message will not change for your coalition regardless of the situation. So these are what we like to call evergreen messages. They are long-lasting statements. They remain constant regardless of the specific situation. So if you're speaking to a group of school kids or you're speaking to legislators, your overall key message will be the same. The messages help create an environment and a belief system among your audiences. They make them believe you, they make them aware of what's going on, and they help create support for planning and public health. Now, each message, as you remember from the pyramid, is supported by 1 or 2 proof points, the middle and bottom layers. I'll walk you through each one of the messages and proof points, but the proof points are what will change based on what audience or situation you're in. So if you're speaking to a group of school kids, your proof point might be talking about how this latest mountain bike helps you get faster and you can go more miles and that sort of thing. Or as you're talking to your legislators, mentioning that by increasing active physical activity, we can decrease the cost of medical needs within the community. So those are the items that will change. The message at the top will remain the same. So let's look a little bit more into proof points. They're going to support and enhance your key message. These are what will change depending on who the audience is, what the event is, what the situation is. They can tell a story. They can make the project local. You can talk about Jane Smith down the block who has improved her health by walking every day for 15 minutes. They can provide facts or benefits about the program you're working on. They're memorable. These are usually what you will see when a newspaper reporter or a broadcast reporter quotes someone. This is usually where they're getting their quotes from because they're kind of more interesting to people and more relatable. So examples of proof points, they can be a statistic, an anecdote, an endorsement from an allied group, a personal experience. They can come from anywhere. So let's look at how all of this works. So here's an example of a message. Exercise is critical to maintaining health. Our message stays the same regardless of the audience. Our proof points. Studies have shown that individuals who exercise at least 30 minutes a day will live on average 4 years longer than those who are sedentary. A second proof point is saying that for every 2 hours a woman spends watching television each day, she has a 23% higher risk of becoming obese and a 14% higher risk of developing diabetes. So we can place these into our pyramid. If you can't tell, I'm a little bit of a visual learner to help me figure this out. So the very top of our pyramid is our message that stays the same. The middle and the bottom are our 2 proof points. And that's how we would set up our message pyramid. Now, we've created a couple of Plan4Health messages, and feel free to copy and use any or all of these messages as you like if they work for your coalition. The first one discusses broad terms about the project. Plan4Health is a 3-year project that strengthens the connection between planning and public health. Our second message, planners and public health professionals have the knowledge and expertise to support our communities to make changes that will lead to healthier lives. And our third proof point, where we live impacts all aspects of our health. Planners and public health professionals are working to improve overall community health. And if you've come across any of the media outreach that APA has done for the Plan4Health program, you will see some of these messages included in our content. So how do we take our Plan4Health messages and tailor them for your coalition? Well, here's an example using the Planners and Public Health Professionals' knowledge and expertise. That message remains the same. In our proof points, we have one focusing on Grand Rapids that since 2009 has created nearly 70 miles of either dedicated bike lanes or shared paths. Another proof point takes you to Fort Worth, Texas, that it changed its farmers market ordinance to allow markets to take place in more areas and to increase the variety of food options. So this is one example of how you might use the Plan4Health messages. Another example is the Plan4Health is a 3-year project. We have a couple of different proof points here, and these are what APA would be using to speak about the Plan4Health. 35 coalitions are working across the country to improve access to nutritious food and increase opportunities for physical exercise. Within each of the 35 coalitions are members of the American Planning Association and the American Public Health Association, uniting planning and public health experts under a common goal of creating healthier communities. And finally, the project will provide $2.25 million to boost efforts to reduce chronic disease, including obesity. So we talked a little bit about here are our messages, here's why we need them to get through all of the chatter that's going on in the environment around us. And you're thinking to yourself, this is great. How do I even start? Well, we have a worksheet available for you, and you can download it now under the Files section, under the Files pod. And I'll walk you through a little bit of the pieces of the worksheet so you can start creating your own messages for your own coalition. So our very first piece is looking at the target audiences. We need to think about who are you wanting to reach? Who is the important individuals? Now remember, your messages overall will stay the same regardless of your audience. So don't limit your audience based on just who you want to, what message you want to get across. Think broad, think global. Who's everyone in your community that is important and that needs to know about the Plan4Health coalition you're working on? Our next step is thinking about what constraints our audiences are under. Remember, you're going to forget 40% of what I've said within an hour. So we need to think about what are 2 of the 3 most important points, most important ideas you want to get across to your audience. What do they already know? What do they not know? What do you need them to know? What is something that will change the way they do behaviors and that sort of thing? And we suggest limiting it down to 2 or 3 because, of course, we can go very long and very broad and deep on this and come up with 50 different things, but then it gets harder for us to narrow our message. So as hard as it might seem, you really want to limit it to yourself to about 2 or 3 different ideas just to make it a manageable project, or you're going to spend 6 months working on your messages and not getting them out there to your audience. Included on the worksheet, we have the 3 Plan4Health messages, and again, any coalition is welcome to use those any way they see fit if they work for them in that manner. Next on the worksheet, we're talking about why should the audiences care. Is it improving their health? Is it improving the community? Is it reducing the financial costs that the community has to pay for health care? And then the action item. What do you want the audience to think, to do once they've seen this message? Do you want them to attend an event? Do you want them to contact their legislator and encourage the legislator to pass a certain piece of upcoming legislation? Do you want them to support the coalition, like your Facebook page? So what do you want the audience to do once they've heard your message? And finally, we're coming down to the message portion. Now, messages are not going to be created in a half hour. They're going to take some time. So your first draft is not going to be your final draft. And if you go into it with that mindset, it'll make it a little easier for you. You want to keep your core messages, the very top of your pyramid, to about 2 to 3 total. You don't want to get too many more than that, because then you start running into the issues of inconsistency. And the benefit of, if every time you talk to someone in your community and you repeat the same message about improving the community health through physical activity, you start to get a repetition. So the more you hear something, the more you remember it. So it's more likely that they'll take it away. The other thing that's also a little bit of a challenge is you want to keep your main message, your first main message, to one idea or topic. So we don't want to throw everything in the kitchen sink into that one message so we can keep everybody happy within the coalition. One idea per message. That's really important because that helps it resonate better. So if you're trying to tell members in your neighborhood about your coalition and all of the benefits A through Z that the coalition offers, you're going to lose them. They're going to forget most of what you've said. So if you only give them an A, B, and C option, they're most likely going to remember at least one of them. Now, once you think you have a very good draft of your messages, test them out with people. Ask other members of the coalition. Ask somebody that might work next to you in your office. If you have questions, you can come to Elizabeth or to myself. But definitely test them out and see if what you want to get across is actually coming across in your message. The testing part is really important, and it doesn't have to be a formal survey, phone call in, internet survey, that sort of thing. Just casually test with people as they're walking by. Hey, does this make sense to you? What do you get from this? Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I like to always say that I'm trying to write my messages for my 90-year-old grandmother to understand, because she believes everything she hears on the TV. So try and use a test as that. Can you reach the 6-year-old? Can you reach the 90-year-old? So after you have your messages all complete, you're going to want to start identifying your proof points. Now, your proof points are going to be based on the audience, the event that you're attending, or the specific action item you're doing. Now, remember, messages stay the same, proof points can change. So think about, is there a fact or figure you want to share? Is there a personal story that you can share from your coalition? These are what you want to resonate and stick with your audience. These are kind of, you can think of them like the warm fuzzies, like, oh, that's so wonderful. How can I not support putting in more bike paths through our community? So the proof points will change. Your messages stay the same. The proof points will support your message. Now, I know this was a really quick overview. Like I said, I could talk your ears off for 6 hours on this, and you'd probably hate me afterwards. But all of this information and much more that you could find is in our Planner's Communications Guide, and the URL is on the screen. It's available to APA members, so if you're not an APA member, don't panic. Reach out to Elizabeth, and we'll make sure you can get in touch and can get access to that. And my contact information is available as well, so if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call me. I get very excited about communications and messages, so it's right up my alley if someone has any questions. Elizabeth?
Great. Thank you, Roberta. That was fabulous. So we do have some time for questions. Folks are welcome to use the chat box over on the right-hand side of your screen. Or if you'd like to unmute your phone and just ask Roberta a question directly, you're more than welcome to do that. I did want to make sure to remind folks that you can download the messages worksheet in the file box on the lower right-hand side, and I'll make sure to send that out to the full Plan4Health cohort as well. So I have to say, and I shouldn't confess this, but I will, I never fully understood kind of the relationship between messages and proof points, and I always intuitively understood that we needed a personal story, but really thinking about how that feeds into the messaging pyramid was really helpful for me, Roberta.
Good. It's a little hard because you're like, my messages don't change, but my proof points can. So that's, once you have a solid message at the top of the pyramid, it starts to kind of flow a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Well, and I liked how you mentioned the action item piece as well. Sometimes I feel like we are pushing a message or a story out into the abyss, but we do want coalition members or community members to take the next step. And so I think that was really helpful to kind of connect your idea and your thought and your message to a potential next step for folks to really actively engage in the Plan4Health project, or really any project that folks might be working on.
Exactly. The ask is so important. It's something we always tend to forget. If you're not specifically asked something, Do you tend to respond or volunteer? Well, maybe not. So by asking, you're calling people and saying, hey, there's something that you need to do here. So that's really an important aspect to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's especially useful at this point in the project for Cohort 2 folks who are really just launching their work and starting to introduce Plan4Health to community members and building on work that they've already done, of course, but this is a new angle or a new flavor, and so having the message and a proof point and then also a way for you to get involved, it seems like a great recipe for engagement.
Definitely. And if someone is too shy to ask questions or unavailable, I'm always available to answer offline too.
Great. I did wonder if you had any advice. I think sometimes it can be challenging to think about, Plan4Health is this wonderful new project, but everybody has a lot of work that's already going on. And so maybe coalitions are developing some Plan4Health messages, but would it be okay if those messages, also were messages for ongoing projects or kind of blended into other activities or strategies that are happening on the ground? Or do you recommend really keeping things a bit separate?
I think if you're not muddling the message too much, you can definitely, because obviously projects are continuing nonstop before and after Plan4Health. So if you can do it in such a way that you're not going to say, okay, I'm going to tell you everything and anything I'm doing in the next 30 seconds, and you need to know this, it's fine. The big thing is to test it out with other people, and it can be someone within the coalition or someone who you work with who may not be in the coalition to be like, does this make sense what I'm saying, or am I confusing you? That's the big thing is to you it might make sense because we're the closest to the project, but maybe ask someone outside of the project, does it make sense what you're saying? Do these two items relate to each other and support each other, or do they kind of conflict? Mm-hmm. So I guess the answer in short, Elizabeth, would be it depends.
Well, and I think the testing recommendation is a great idea as well, and that's certainly something that we struggle with, both as planners and public health professionals. All of the jargon we use and the tendency to speak in acronyms and refer to PSEs in the built environment and all population-level health changes, and so really kind of taking that out and trying to tell a story that does make sense to someone who's younger, maybe not as young as a 6-year-old, but who's a younger member of the community as well as an older adult. I think that's really great advice.
Thank you. Definitely. That's why I use the 90-year-old. My grandmother's a very smart woman, but it's amazing what I think might be clear, and she just looks at me like her eyes start to glaze over if you start to use, especially if you start to use jargon and acronyms, And that the challenge for all of us is when we're in an intense situation, that's our like shelter, our safety blanket. So we tend to revert back to using jargon and stuff because we're like, oh, I know what that is. I'm okay. I'm at my home base. But somebody who doesn't know, they start to get turned off and they get disinterested and their mind starts to wander and you start to lose that person. So it's a really hard challenge, but it's something to be really aware of even when you're speaking in general terms about the coalition. Just take a look at how many times you're using acronyms or jargon.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And I think when we do get caught in our acronym land, we end up putting the listener on the spot too. They have to admit they don't know what's going on, and that can be a little bit embarrassing, especially if a community member is just trying to get involved or maybe is new to a particular topic.
Exactly. We want them to feel welcome to join the coalitions in the community and not have to be like, should I know what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. Well, I should pause here and make sure we're not chatting over people's questions. I think I've learned a lot about communications through Plan4Health myself, and I've really enjoyed working with Roberta and Emily and the folks at APHA. So I will stop talking for a minute and give folks a chance to ask questions over the phone if you'd like, or you're welcome to use the chat box on the right-hand side of the screen too. So before we move over to the social media side, I did want to ask you one more question, Roberta, about target audiences. And I know that the CDC has really encouraged us on the national level to think about kind of 3 general categories, 3 kind of buckets of target audiences, if you will: the general public, our national partners, and then also our subrecipients, you all on the phone, the grantees. And so that's been helpful for us to think about how to adjust some of our emails or success stories and things like that. For coalitions working at the local level, are there any particular audiences you would recommend that folks keep in mind, or any kind of standard audiences that people should be thinking about, or does it really just depend?
It partially depends, but some that you might not think about. Neighborhood associations or neighborhood groups are a great one to reach out into because obviously they want that quality of life that we're working towards. The other one is, the chamber. If there's a chamber of commerce in your community, that's a really good avenue and group to talk to and target and share your information with because they have a very important vested interest in the community itself. They're usually business leaders and business owners in that regard. And don't dismiss, depending on what your coalition is focusing on, don't dismiss some of the youth groups, Girl Scouts, Boys and Girls Clubs, after-school care programs. I'm thinking like when I was younger, I loved riding my bicycle up and down the streets, and I had safe streets that I could ride on and didn't have to worry about traffic and that sort of thing. So while they're a younger group, but they're not voting, they pay attention. Nowadays the younger kids are a lot more engaged and aware of what's going on, and they do have the power of social media with them. So those are just a couple of the narrowing down the general public, and obviously a really important one if you're working on legislation or need to get some legislation passed or changed is your local committee members, your local town hall members, and then that can keep building up to, your county, to your state further. So you can really just sit there and kind of piece it out as detailed as you want to go.
That's great. That's really helpful. I think you're right about the chamber as being an untapped resource, and youth as well. I have to say I've been really impressed with some of the coalitions in Cohort 1 who've connected with young people and really had them engage in the project around designing murals and logos and things like that. And then hopefully that will be planting the seed for future social media posts and things like that. I think that sounds like a great idea.
Definitely, and they have their mom and dads or their aunts and uncles' ears as well, so it's one way to bring the message home.
Great. Well, thank you, Roberta. That was really a wonderful overview of messaging and messages. And as Roberta said, the communications guide is available for APA members, and the link is right there. And if you are not an APA member, please don't hesitate to send me an email, and I could go ahead and chat my email address just in case you don't have it. I'm going to send you a slightly modified version through Dropbox with a few of the chapters and a particular sections that we think would be useful to folks. Well, I have to say the youth reference in social media was a perfect segue to our next section of the webinar. And I do want to just pause a moment and let folks know that we have designed this hour in two parts. So Roberta, of course, provided the first 30 minutes around messaging and messages, and that PowerPoint presentation is also available for download as a separate file over in the file box on the lower right-hand side. And the next 30 minutes will really be led by Patrick from the American Public Health Association, talking about social media. And if you're curious and just want to look at Patrick's slides, that's also a separate file on the lower right-hand side. We might be hearing a couple of beeps as folks hop in and hop out because we did advertise this as 2 mini webinars to try to lure you in. I know that it's hard to give up a full 60 minutes, but we were thinking that 30 minutes that are action-packed might be a little bit more appealing on a Monday afternoon. So I might just pause for one more moment to make sure that we actually start at the time we advertised at 4:30. And I did glance through Patrick's slides, and we've got some great social media tips, and I may have caught a glimpse of Ryan Gosling, so I am curious as to what we have in store for this next 30 minutes. And I'll also just take a moment to tell you a little bit about Patrick. So Patrick Benko is APHA's Manager of Online Marketing. And Patrick has over a decade of experience working in online marketing for a variety of organizations, including small nonprofits, e-commerce realtors, publishers, and Fortune 500 companies. So quite a variety there. Now in his 4th year at APHA, Patrick is a driving force for using analytics and performance indicators, which makes him a trusted source for social media insights and campaign building. And I definitely would agree with that. We've been trying to use a bit more analytics for our own Plan4Health website, and it's been very revealing. What people are drawn to and what we think people are drawn to are not always exactly the same thing. So it is just about 4:30, so I will go ahead and pass things over to you, Patrick.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and hopefully I'll be able to do Roberta's presentation some justice by helping everyone here get your message out on social media. So we have just 30 minutes or so I won't have time to use any big words, but I might try to talk a little fast to get everything in. One thing that I did in preparation for today's presentation was to pre-schedule some tweets using the Plan4Health hashtag, which is hashtag Plan4Health. And just to make sure that we are working here, I need to be using the arrow there. All right, so that came out fantastic. But I'll be tweeting from @PatrickBenko. I included the picture there so you know that is me. So look for those to pop up intermittently as we're talking. Some of them are links to things I'm talking about, and others are things that I probably didn't have time to mention but kind of wish I did. So I'll talk about my Plan4Health connection here. So as they mentioned, I am the manager of online marketing here at APHA. I manage several accounts while also trying to keep up with my own personal ones. So why do I care about Plan4Health? Well, several years ago, I was a sedentary smoker pushing fried foods as a elementary school fundraiser across the nation. Then my partner gave me a few ultimatums, and I made some career changes. So now you're listening to the voice of a very happily married, marathon-running, non-smoker who saw the light and is now using his marketing powers for good. While the effort involved in that transition was really difficult for me, the infrastructure around that was actually pretty ample. So that included my wife, family, but also great community resources in the built environment around us. So I'm actually really excited about the invitation to help you guys out and to kind of further this whole program. Not to mention, I have a great penchant for my run commuting evangelism, so anything to get more active transportation out there, I'm all about. So as I said, half hour really is not nearly enough time to go through even a few of the biggest platforms individually. So we're kind of going to skip over this is the button you push to post a tweet, or here's the difference between a like and a retweet or a favorite. Instead, I'm going to try to focus on a lot of kind of what Roberta was talking about, kind of making sure that your social media efforts are going to be strategic and purposeful. So where do we start? So you want to align yourself with your organization's goals and objectives. So kind of the first example I have here is early in my career as a catalog and e-commerce shoe salesman. I thought it was being pretty proactive. I was checking the inventory of a particular boot or soccer cleat that was coming in. And I was in anticipation of the World Cup back in 2006. So I was sitting there checking the inventory, checking the dates, even asking around the building. So I knew exactly when this product was going to hit the actual shelves. So as soon as it did, I posted it, and without fail, it sold out. I thought, great, I did fantastic. I sold all these cleats, made tons of money. They were $200 cleats. But what I came to find out was that our catalog was hitting that day, and the catalog was going to our best customers. And what it was supposed to be kind of a special treat for them to be able to get this soccer cleat before anybody else did. So what I did was kind of ruin a great opportunity to reward our best customers. So kind of why did I bring that up here? The lesson is that social media can be a very powerful tool, but it needs to be in lockstep with everything else that's going on in your organization. So one of the things I tell people is that this is hopefully the easy part, and that your organization already has a mission statement and strategic goals in place. So all you have to do is kind of translate those into social media strategy. Here at APHA, we have some guiding priorities, including strengthening public health practice. We then turn those into social media objectives, such as promoting APHA webinars and events to increase attendance or participating in partner Twitter chats to disseminate AJPH research. So kind of to give my World Cup story a happy ending, what I should have done was follow the company goal of rewarding customer loyalty, waiting a few days later to post about how our Gold Club members are the first to hear about new products and join that and be in the know. It would also have been helpful to know that a second shipment was coming in to coincide with the larger launch. But all in all, kind of what I wasn't doing was going along with what the rest of the organization was doing. So, you could also say that's a, print versus e-commerce kind of battle, but instead it's really making sure that you're going with the base of the organization is. So once you know, and I'm glad Roberta brought this up as well, is once you know what you should be doing, you need to figure out the who part. So defining your audience will help you decide what platform will be most relevant to your organization. Again, hopefully some of this work has been done, but if you're following, your message, got your worksheet and all of those sorts of things. But if not, social media and getting involved in social media can actually be a great catalyst for having these discussions. So making sure before you hop on the platform, before you get out there and create an account and start posting, you really got to go through these exercises. And if you are already out there a little bit, social media can also be kind of a helping hand in that discovery with analytics. So kind of start asking yourself, are you a community organization? What are the demographics of your area? Are you going after early adopting tech-savvy youth? Or do you need to connect with a population that has limited internet access? Or they might have internet access, but they all have smartphones. I'd also be particularly remiss if I didn't mention gender as a really big thing here, as several platforms really skew heavily towards one gender over the other. But the other thing, and I'll kind of talk about it more later as well, is before you pick a platform, some self-evaluation is also in order. So I kind of have a picture here of a group of people, but what's kind of missing is who's actually talking to them. So be realistic about what you're capable of. For instance, is the person managing the platform going to be able to match the style and language of your target audience on something like Snapchat, where do they know all the acronyms? Do they know exactly what kind of pictures people are posting? Or instead, do you have a treasure trove of images that would be perfect for sites such as Instagram? So you're looking at the things you're already good at, or the people that you have available to you. The other big consideration there is how much time do you have, also known as the true cost of social media. Some platforms require a lot of time, where others kind of lend themselves to being able to post just once a day or every couple of days. So one of the things that, if I timed it up correctly, is I actually posted a link to a Pew Internet Research study from back in August. And it kind of shows a few pretty interesting things, such as Pinterest is dominated by women. So that's a great one for those on the nutrition side. If you're trying to target mothers, so thinking things to do with kids in parks or recipes. Otherwise, LinkedIn, very different in terms of that it does well among an older and educated set. But they're probably not there for consuming health-related content. But instead, that could be a great opportunity for you guys to set up a LinkedIn group for networking amongst your cohort. So if you have a bunch of businesses, or you mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, getting people that are all interested in that built environment, or all interested in the same things that you are, it's a great opportunity to kind of bring them all together and let them digitally network. So we've got our goals, we've got an audience, and you've even started to scout out kind of what social media platforms make sense for you. One of the things that I really strongly believe in is having a system in place that empowers your social media manager while keeping your messages focused and in line with your organization's goals. So how do you do that? So kind of a little analogy I've got here is that picture a bucket of Legos from several sets. You got them all splayed across the floor. Your job is kind of see how you can combine those, all those pieces to build something. So some people are going to try to rebuild each of those sets. They might have all the directions in hand, and they can, are easy. They have the time, the resources to really dig through all pieces and build them all out. Others will try to build one really big thing. So think just putting all your eggs in one basket or one social media platform. While others are going to be, very small and intricate pieces where they're able to really put they've got a limited amount of time, and so they're going to really focus all their effort onto the places where, the lowest hanging fruit. So these next few questions are going to kind of help you figure out what you're going to do with your Legos. So kind of they are, what are you posting? How are you posting? And who is posting? We kind of hit on this a little bit already. But let me give you a great example of what not to do from the APHA annual meeting a few years back. So at one point, we had a trained journalist live tweeting a session. We had somebody from our conventions department walking the expo hall, taking pictures and, glad handing our exhibitors along with a bunch of images. And kind of thrown in there were a bunch of pre-scheduled tweets, come visit the social media lab, or hey, there's this great session going on in room 102. So what you had were three very different voices, three very different agendas, and one very confused audience. While this might be an extreme case, the lesson is there. And kind of, it's one of those, making sure that you have each of those questions answered. Otherwise, you could come up, have this scenario play out to a certain degree. And so when I was creating these slides, this was kind of the most difficult, because each time I tried to address just one question, I couldn't do it without the other two getting intertwined. And it really threatened to destabilize the entire order of my presentation, and I couldn't get past it. I had this whole mental block. So what I did was give it a kind of try to combine all three of them in some different examples of how the answers to these questions would play out. And kind of keep in mind that these aren't hard and fast rules or even suggestions, just kind of this is what might happen and kind of get you thinking about what could work for you. So the first one I have is our @PublicHealth handle. And this is if you're going to be posting mainly organizational updates, news items without any kind of commentary, or links to your own content. Is really kind of what a good example of what @PublicHealth does. It means that your logo is probably your profile picture, your your voice is pretty standard, and it really matches that of your website and your other communications. So while there is room for personality, there isn't going to be much controversy or personal opinion. And really the kind of a great way that our @PublicHealth manager keeps all that fresh is she posts a lot. There's a constant stream. And she really lets kind of the content be the main driver of the excitement there. So the next one I have is @KitCookoff. And what this is from Arizona, basically Homeland Security Emergency Management. And normally that's a very stodgy topic that, without a lot of room for any kind of personality, you've got to be speaking in, a very monotone, and you've got to maintain your kind of credibility so that, the most important information always reaches the audience. so that when you're talking, they always know this is important. So how do you do something like a cooking contest? Well, what they are is they've created a unique handle for just that campaign that really kind of targets their demographic in a different way, uses a very different tone and voice, and really lets them speak directly to their audience. So think of this if you're trying to talk to youth and you've got your organizational account and you don't want to be using slang or anything like that, this could be a great opportunity or a great route to go. It's also a great way to infuse humor and familiarity. So what they are able, so while the Arizona emergency management accounts may not be able to reply to people on a regular basis just because they don't want to be, they don't know who they're talking to or what they're responding to. This gives them an opportunity to do that on a much more regular basis without some of the consequences that might come about. So then the next one I have is I just have on there @YourLeader. And I kind of struggled to find a great one that was doing this, but I did find some cool ones. So this is one you would use, let's say you have a dynamic leader who does regular speaking engagements, attends many events, but they're also tech savvy enough to have their own account. They update it regularly. They also can take good pictures, which is very tough these days with all the cell phones out there. But they also know how to have a good ratio of your organizationally focused posts to maybe some personal ones. You got to have, so they know how to make it personable, but they're still focused on that message that you have. So there's a few more pitfalls with this kind of setup, but there's also a lot of benefits. So it's absolutely awesome to see someone with their hands in the dirt or walking the walk. So sort of how to say, kind of the example I give here is what happens if they go on vacation. So you get some great posts of them riding mass transit in another part of the world, or you're getting pictures of their feet in poolside margaritas. Or even worse, they go dark for those 2 weeks that they're on vacation. So it's great for person-to-person communications and showing that, that, like I said, hands in the dirt. And kind of the example of people that I give here, and I hesitate to give it because of the resources that they have to pull it off, but the executive branch, the White House, does a really good job of this. And with the @POTUS, @FLOTUS, and @VP accounts. So if you look them over, they're in the first person, but you can kind of tell some of those, Joe is not the one that hit post on some of those tweets. Some of them you can definitely hear his voice in, but otherwise they're able to stay on message. You can tell that a communications person is able to easily step in and send some tweets out for them as well to kind of maintain that continuity and maintain the posting cadence that is required of an account such as that. So I'll also say that you can have all three. Just be clear which one gets top billing. If you're using more than one, set clear expectations. Nobody goes to @Kit Cookoff to get emergency updates, but @Kit Cookoff probably would retweet or share something very important, such as how to apply for disaster assistance, or if there was a statewide emergency, they would be there to help amplify that main account. I also want to make sure that just because you fall into that first category of, without public health, that it doesn't mean your account can't have a personality. Pictures of staff in action or people participating in your events can all add life and action when it comes to humor or creativity. Feel free to borrow from others. So this is where I throw in the Ryan Gossinger example here. This is from our APHA's Get Ready account. And there's a few emergency management departments and health departments that really utilize this in a great way. Because in the Cook-Off example, as I said, Arizona Emergency Management can't be talking like that. But what they can do is they can share things like this from other reputable sources. So I kind of didn't have the resources at my hands to really kind of go out into the active transportation nutrition world and find these for you, but they're out there. There's people making memes. They're, in a kind of wholesome, lighthearted way that even if you aren't able to create these things and, there's no way you would ever be able to get anything with, this pretty face on it approved by your higher-ups, there's still an opportunity to use it and share it and find it out there. But before I get too much into what to post, let's run through a few things to consider here with social media policy. And kind of the big thing I have here is, write these things down. And I don't mean take notes here. I mean have these things written out, and, a hard copy, something you can hand out. So write down, your guiding principles for your social media. Right along with what kind of messaging you're going to be doing. But is it to inform or engage? Or is it to further a certain message? Just have it there in concrete. Write down who are you trying to reach or help. Writing that audience down, putting it in the document. And use phrases such as be positive or add value. Make sure that those verbs and adjectives are all thrown in there. And kind of what I'll probably repeat this 4 or 5 times by the end of this, but treat it like a document you're going to hand to somebody that's new to your organization. And once they've read it, they should have a pretty clear grasp of what your social media efforts are all about. So then I have rules of engagement. What that means is having a written document that outlines what kind of talk is encouraged, what kind of talk is discouraged. One of the things when I was kind of farming out what should I talk about was not attacking cars or drivers in the active transportation, being much more inclusive. So if that's kind of something your organization strives for, write it down. Also, making sure that you write down what's okay to retweet or share. Kind of one of the things that if you're following, presidential politics, and it's kind of hard not to, especially around here, but you need to run a background check on this person. Kind of the example I think I tweeted out was that Trump's recent flack for retweeting, a fairly offensive account. The tweet itself wasn't necessarily offensive, but their handle and everything else on their account was. So, do you need to actually click and make sure that this person isn't a very bad person otherwise. Also, who are you going to follow? Are you only going to follow verified accounts or other government accounts or other organizations, or are you going to follow the general public? So again, just get it all in writing and making sure that it's available to people out there. So kind of getting down to some brass tacks here. Kind of got these 3 things listed out, and that's listen, engage, and analyze. And that's kind of the gist of where you start and how you kind of get going with social media. So before, and we kind of got a good one here, before jumping in, take a look around and see what's happening. So I have one friend who I can honestly say can enter a party by screaming, "I'm here," maybe smash a beer can over his head and yell out a crazy yell. This guy is currently working in Vegas, and if you ever need to energize, 10,000 Cisco reps in an expo hall, he's your guy. But the rest of us probably need to be a little bit more subtle. So if you're just getting started, take some time to go out and listen to the conversations. Peek in on a Twitter chat. Follow a hashtag for a day. Notice the pace, the posting cadence of other accounts you're trying to mimic. This is also when you start to follow other accounts, discovering kind of the ecosystem within your geographic area or your particular field. And one of the big things I tell people at this stage is start hunting for accounts that engage with others. So kind of moving on to the engagement part is So that list of people that, engage, that really kind of comes into play once you're ready to post. So post a few things announcing yourself, what your group is all about, then start engaging with those accounts that you found in a relevant and compelling way. So hopefully they share your content with their followers, and you're on your way to getting followers of your own. So what I've got here, this is, I was trying to find a way to get my kid or my dog in the presentation, and find a way to get the kid in today. And during our recent blizzard, I tweeted a picture of, the amount of snow we had, the picture of my kid, and it wasn't by accident that I knew Chuck Belford was going to pick this up, and 10 minutes later it was going to be on the air. I'd actually kind of been watching him for a couple of weeks and watching some of the other news announcers and kind of, experimenting with when to tweet at them and all that kind of stuff. And paid off, got myself and my kid on TV. So that's just an example. There's other things such as, following your local reporters and starting to look at, what they post on Twitter, what they like or what they retweet, and then what shows up in their column, a couple of days later or even that day. So it really can pay off dividends in kind of that whole tracking part of it. Also, find your niche hashtag or Twitter chat and start participating. So two examples I have here is that DC has its VZDC for Vision Zero, while Maryland has a hashtag MD Traffic for link. So kind of what you can do there, your VZDC is great for reaching other access transportation Vision Zero people, but there's probably not a whole lot of numbers or volume there. Whereas MD Traffic has a ton of volume, a lot of people that don't know what you are all about, but they're probably not all going to be very interested. So kind of finding your niche there as well. And I'm watching the time, and I want to get to it, is analyze. And kind of, I told this is a social media 101. And so my big challenge here for you is, my general rule is measure what you can change. My secondary rule is measure what's important to you. And so my challenge to you there is create a report, create a social media report. Pick a few metrics. It doesn't have to be a long list, but make sure it's something you're going to fill out on at least a weekly or biweekly basis. Force yourself to actually go into the account and look at what happened. Did you post something and did it bomb? Did it just get 0 likes? But then you posted that Ryan Gosling picture and you got 50 when you normally get 12. What does that tell you? More Ryan Gosling. This is from our at Get Ready account, and you can see February 14th when we posted Ryan Gosling. It shot up. So what are we going to do next year? More Ryan Gosling type stuff. It's going to help you by just just pick something and that you can change. We can create more e-cards, but we can't necessarily change a few other things. And I'm watching that clock tick down. So a few other things I want to make sure I mention is National Public Health Week is coming up April 4th. And the big reason I mention that is it's a great way to kind of make a splash on social media. We have tons of resources in the toolkit. We even have free-form tweets. There's a bunch of events. There's the Twitter chat, which if you follow along, I'm also going to be doing a presentation on how to participate on social media in National Public Health Week. So it's kind of a great kind of pre-formed, already occurring event with a large audience, and it's kind of, I'd say, an easy way to ease your way into social media and still make a fairly big impact in terms of reaching people and seeing how other people do it. And I really apologize that I didn't leave much time for questions, but hopefully my contact information is out there, and I do welcome any kind of questions, both on Twitter or via email. There you go. There's a few other ways, and I will let Elizabeth kind of let me go a few minutes longer or make me wrap up here.
Sure, this was fabulous. Thank you, Patrick. I think if you're willing to stay for just another minute or more, we could just check in and see if folks have any burning questions they might want to ask you over the phone. You're welcome to unmute yourself or send through the chat box. I think you've given a lot of us a lot to think about, and really I feel like there were some really great themes between Roberta's presentation and Patrick's presentation, knowing our audience, providing ways to engage community members and others. And I really like that you closed on analytics and putting together a report and trying to understand what you could do differently next time and how to make changes or just really figure out what's working and why.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to add is that I really want to put together a Storify, which is basically a aggregate of social media posts and links together for this presentation. So if other people have tips or resources that they have found useful, please tweet it out with the Plan4Health hashtag. And I'll also try to make sure I include Roberta's stuff and links to her things as well. So I definitely welcome people to kind of jump in with that as well.
That's great. Thank you. So it looks like we do have one question, if you have a moment to respond. Is there a template for social media reports that you find useful?
I'd say the best template is the one that you're going to fill out. I will follow up. I'll try to get that, get her contact information and follow up on that one. Just because I don't have one, there's a few out there, but it kind of depends on your platform. It depends on what you're looking at, what your goals are. So I hesitate to just point to one right off the bat. But I would love to give a few examples and kind of give multiple options for that one.
Great, thank you. I think it's easy to, it's easier now with the ability on Twitter and Facebook to kind of track the number of followers you have and the likes and the relikes and the retweets and all of that. So there's definitely a lot of data out there, but it sounds like really the goal is figuring out what do you want to accomplish and then working toward measuring that particular item or kind of focusing your idea of success.
Yeah, I mean, analytics are really, and metrics are a means to an end. They are not the end. So they are helping you, push you forward, not the things that you do at the end of a campaign. They're the thing that jumpstarts the next campaign.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to think about that. Never-ending cycle.
Never-ending, very vicious cycle.
Well, great. Well, we'll just pause for maybe one more moment if folks have another question they'd like to send out. And certainly, please feel free to send me an email or Patrick an email, and we'll work on finding an example we could share with the community. And of course, we'll be sending out or posting a recording of this webinar along with the slides on the Plan4Health website. Well, thank you so much, Roberta and Patrick, for being here this afternoon, and thank you, everyone, for listening in on a Monday. We do appreciate it. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, we will see you all next time. Thank you.